Hello again and welcome to another episode of Interactive Biology TV, where we're making biology fun. My name is Leslie Samuel, and in this video I'm going to be talking about the structure of the clavicle. More specifically, I'm going to first talk about the ends and the shaft of the clavicle. Then I'm going to talk about how to determine whether it's a left or right clavicle, and then the structures that are on the clavicle. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to identify different aspects of the clavicle. So let's get right into it. So here I'm looking at the clavicle, and we spoke a little bit about the clavicle in the previous video, and I want to point out a few features of the clavicle. First of all, over here we have the acromial end of the clavicle. So this is where it articulates with the acromion process of the scapula, that acromioclavicular joint that we spoke about in the last video. And this is the sternal end of the clavicle, where it articulates with the manubrium of the sternum, the sternoclavicular joint. So the acromial end and the sternal end. And then, of course, the main body of the sternum, that is what we're going to call the shaft. Okay, so we have the ends, the two ends, and the shaft of the sternum. One of the features that I want to point out here, if you look over here on the X-ray, this chest X-ray, you'll see that you can also see, once again, we have the sternal end, and we have the acromial end. And what you can notice in terms of a difference is this acromial end here. Let me do that again. This acromial end here, it's much flatter. And if you come over here to the sternal end, you'll see that it's more rounded on the sternal end, and that's one of the distinguishing features that you can see. You can't see it as much in this picture, but you do kind of see that this is a little flatter than this that's a little more rounded. So the sternal end is a little more rounded. And then what else you'll notice is that as we look at this clavicle, this is going to be a left clavicle, and there's some features that kind of give that away. Right here you can see that there's kind of a curvature, and what you'll notice is that there's this anterior convexity, so it kind of curves forward. The medial 2/3, so let's say from about here all the way down, that medial 2/3, that's going to be convex anteriorly, so curved anteriorly, and then the lateral 1/3 is going to be convex posteriorly, so it curves backwards. So that's one differentiating feature. So if you want to tell if it's a left or a right clavicle, what you're going to do, you're going to make sure that the acromial end is distal, the sternal end is proximal, and that there's this anterior convexity for the proximal 2/3 and a lateral and posterior convexity. And once you have it in that position, you'll be able to tell that, okay, this is left. If it were right, it would be the exact opposite. So what I'm looking at here, I'm looking at the superior surface of the left clavicle. So this is looking from the top down. So let's look at the inferior surface, which is what you see here. So I'm basically just taking this one and flipping it over. And I want to point out a few structures. Okay, so first let's deal with the distal structures, more on the acromial end. Here you can see there's a tubercle here, and we're going to call this the conoid tubercle. And then here we see the trapezoid line. So the conoid tubercle, the trapezoid line, and these are all on the inferior aspect. And these are going to be significant when we talk about the ligaments that connect to this tubercle, the conoid tubercle, and the trapezoid line. And we're going to talk about that in a later video. Then we also see on the distal end, or the acromial end, coming down to the acromial end, we have the deltoid tuberosity. Okay, so the deltoid tubercle or the deltoid tuberosity, you can see that here also. And you can assume by right now that that's going to have something to do with the deltoid muscle, and we're going to talk about that in a later video. So the deltoideus has to do with the naming of this tubercle. Then let's look right here on the inferior aspect. We also have a groove that we're going to call the subclavian groove, and that has to do with the subclavius muscle, and we're going to talk about that later. And then as we go more medially, or to the proximal end, we're going to see there's a tuberosity here that we're going to call the costal tuberosity. Okay, so I'm not going to go through all of the structures on it because we're going to deal with some of the other structures later. But for now, I want you to remember the ends. I want you to remember some of the features like the curvature and so on, and be able to determine between left and right. Some of the tubercles and tuberosities, the deltoid tubercle, the conoid tubercle, and the trapezoid line, the subclavian groove, and the costal tuberosity. So that's pretty much it. Let us do our review quiz as usual. If you would like to review it and test yourself, you can turn the volume now. Turn the volume down. I'm going to point to the different structures and then you can answer it with me. So first, let's start with the simple. This is the acromial end. Over here we have the sternal end. And this would be the shaft. Then, if we were to look at the structures on the clavicle, here we have the deltoid tubercle. Over here we have the conoid tubercle. Then we have the trapezoid line. We have the subclavian groove, and we have the costal tuberosity. All right, those are all the structures for now. That's pretty much it for this video. If you would like more videos like this and other resources to help make biology fun, visit the website at interactive-biology.com for more biology videos and other resources. This is Leslie Samuel. That's it for this video, and I'll see you in the next one.